Well, since Liam's come in, we score a lot of goals. Even if you take out the Charlton and the game on Friday night, we still score a lot more goals. It feels we score a lot more goals. Keeping clean sheets is still an issue. That's something that we have always had, it feels, in the last 2 or 3 seasons, keeping a clean sheet. But when you go into games like that, and there's a ruthlessness to it that perhaps we haven't seen before under Maresca. And as we said, the Lincoln game was, my God, that was terrible. And you cannot defend that performance. But yeah, there are different changes. We'll talk about Neto in a second, but he's doing other things. Esteval started on the right, but really played as a 10. It's slightly lopsided. The inverted fullback is less obvious for me, even though they do and can come inside. But it's not what we saw under Cucurella, where he's come in and literally be another striker. Yeah. Slightly a toned-down version of that. Yeah, I'm happy. Look, he's won the games he should win. The 2 games he's lost, Arsenal, both of those home and away. The second one, you know, the way the game went, it's the way you should. If you're going to concede in a cup tie like that where you're chasing, in the last minute, it's the way it should be. You know, we didn't lose the game in the 90. We had to throw things forward. But he's winning the games he should win. And, you know, we've got another one coming up at the weekend.
Exactly. Were you surprised by the starting lineup at all, Tobes, and Neto in the 10 as well? Talk to me.
Yeah, it was quite surprising how strong we went, but at the same time, it could have been a tricky game, like, especially on, like, I just think night games are so much work. If that was 12:30 in the daytime, you could get away with resting a few more. I just feel like that's kind of how it works. But he avoided that in playing those stronger players. And even, you know, Neto in the 10, maybe the idea was not as rigid as that. It kind of felt like Esteval at points was drifting in and Neto would switch here and there. But in general, he did stick fairly central and obviously excelled there. Got a hat-trick, another hat-trick. We've had 2 in 3 games, I think it is now. So
it's just what we do. It's what we do now.
Exactly. I think there's a bit of freedom of expression more so with these attackers in comparison to Maresca. It was a bit more of like a rigid structure. And I feel like those players are given a bit more licence to create on their own and not be so like, you know, wait for the fullback to do this or whatever. It feels a bit more, players are just expressing themselves. Because João Pedro, I mean, shooting far more. It feels like those players are just taking the onus on them, which is good because it's resulting in better attacking play for us.
Yep.
That's what we like to see. Yeah. What did you make of
Well,
that?
to be honest with you, first half hour, I couldn't quite make sense of it, the Neto in the 10. Because of his pace, you kind of want him to run in behind. He didn't really do that, but at the end of the game, it's another kind of experiment that he's come up with an answer. The Esteval role was interesting. As I said, he even though positionally he was on the right, he kept coming inside, and there wasn't a huge amount of width on the right. I think Reece occasionally would go out there, but he's not that up and down bombing set right back we've seen in previous seasons. Yeah. So I thought we were a little bit width-wise on the right. I think we're a little bit short. But, you know, we saw the chance that Sarr puts on a plate for Esteval and he should score it. That's running off the right as a 10 and going in behind.
Yeah.
So that was such a nice goal as well, because like, the touch is there, you've taken it around the keeper, you've done all the hard work. All the hard work was done.
Yeah. It's on his left foot. It's you know.
Yeah. Do you think that this was a deliberate plan then to dominate the middle?
I think when you're playing against teams like that, because what I've been impressed with, Liam, is that we actually attack a lot down the middle. We are that team that's playing those little triangles, and you know, we're seeing more and more of that down the middle. I thought first half against Leeds, I thought our performance against Leeds first half was excellent. The only problem we had was that we didn't really have enough end product. But going through the middle, the width of the pitch Liam seems to happy to go through the middle of the pitch. And our little triangle passes, I'm seeing more and more of that in our game under Liam.
No. Do you think that helps to break down teams then that are sitting back?
I think you've got to do both.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think you've got to do both, especially when they're power 5. The width of the pitch generally becomes important. If you play narrow against a back 5, you're playing into their hands. And I think it's about mixing it up.
Yeah, for sure. What were you going to say, Tobes?
I just think Santos has been a big part of that. Like those little passes, like you said, those intricate sort of threes where they're working. Like the first Leeds goal comes from that. Santos sort of threading through. And you've seen that consistently. Like there's a willingness to go forward. And I've quite enjoyed that there's been a lack of that sideways sort of backwards. You know, when we're sort of we're watching Trev to Tosin to Trev for a while, and I feel like we've been far more direct under Rosenior, which I've really enjoyed. And I think Santos has been a big part of that.
Well, we've got to talk about the partnership then. Santos, Caicedo. What do you make of that, Jay?
Well, certain games, I think you'll see it. I think there are other games where he might not. Santos can play as a 10 as well, if need be. But they're forming... it's hard to know exactly what he's thinking right now because you want to play Enzo. Where's Enzo going to play? Well, you're going to play Enzo in the 10. Where's Palmer playing? If Palmer's on the right, where's Esteval playing? If Esteval's on the left, where's Neto playing? There's all of these questions that I'm not saying you have to answer them all in one game. There will be times where you do see changes. And when you've got a squad that we do and so many games coming up, I think there will be changes. But right now, I agree. I think Santos is kind of slick, kind of seamless, under the radar a little bit, and come in and just done his job.
We just feel a lot more secure, don't we? As much as I love Enzo Fernandez as a footballer, but there are just times where Casado's having to do a lot of the running, and Enzo obviously struggles a bit more in that regard. But he's given you so much going forward that you can't not have him in the team. Like you said, that's the sort of conundrum we have where do you fit everyone? But Santos has just offered us that little bit more security in there. We've just got those extra legs, and you just feel a bit more like we're not going to get bypassed or countered as constantly. It feels like we've sort of put out some fires there.
Yep, I've been very impressed with him, and of course there may be a little bit of it the fact that he played under Liam.
Of course,
there's that relationship that's already in place.
Yeah, no, definitely exciting. Nice dilemma to have as well.
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah, and look, when Reece played inside, I remember having the conversation on here about, well, if Reece is going to play alongside Moises and Gusto's there, where's Enzo play? Because Palmer's in the 10. So we're having these conversations all the time.
There we go. Okay, let's talk about Liam Delap then. 3 assists, an almost goal as well. He put his hand up, didn't he? Bless him. But what did you make of his performance against Hull?
Second half was excellent. I did think, especially the Esteval goal, and what I really liked about that goal in particular was just how selfless it was. Like, we know that he could do with the goal. We knew he could do with that confidence boost. Obviously, he had the first half. He held his hands up, I think, in an interview after the game in terms of I should be burying that, and he knows that. But to make what he did out of kind of nothing on that right side and bully the defender a bit, and then to cut it back, it just showed like an awareness that is good for a striker to see, and you felt like you've earned a goal. It's a shame you didn't walk off with a goal, but he ends up walking with, 3 assists?
3 assists, yeah.
Yeah, technically it was a good hold-up play for Neto's hat-trick anyway. So
but that play that you mentioned there for the Esteval goal, I saw that at Ipswich. I've seen less of it at Chelsea. Now, there's a number of reasons for that. Obviously, the injuries. Still hasn't had a consistent run of games that he can start putting these performances together. But I was pleased for him, actually. Well, first off, he looked a little bit off the pace. And even though he got 3 assists, that's not how strikers make their money. You know, he wants numbers in the other column. That's where his bread and butter is. That's where we will all judge him. At the end of the season, we may look at the assists, but the one we first look at in big block caps is how many goals you scored.
Yeah.
And that chance, it was a ricochet. He's done well to close it down.
What did you make of that?
Well, I kind of understand why he thought he went over the line, because he's seen the path, he's seen where it's gone.
Yeah.
But of course, once it doesn't, can you be a little bit more ruthless, a bit quicker? Hesitation slightly. Esteval was in the middle. Maybe that was on his mind with the Esteval goal eventually, that he felt that perhaps I should have passed. Therefore, that second time, he does give it to Esteval.
Yeah.
I think he'll be pleased with the second half performance. And I want to see more of that, where he's a strong, willing runner. He's a powerful boy. I want to see more of those runs in behind.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, he was being a battering ram for that, like you said, for that goal that he created. And we had trouble with Liam Delap playing Ipswich last season.
Oh, don't. I was there.
I
was there. Yeah, Portman Road, 30th of
I want to see
December.
more of that.
Yeah.
Liam Delap. Because we know it's in there.
Yeah, for sure.
I know it's different. When you play with Chelsea, teams set up differently to what they do against Ipswich. So there is going to be other conundrums that he has to solve.
Yeah. Would you say, Tobes, that he is still a raw player then?
Yeah. He's not the refined article, obviously, and people spoke, I think, saying maybe there should have been a club in between that move. But
potentially, yeah.
Yeah, but this is, it's about him taking the onus on him to develop. And it's hard at the moment. You've got João Pedro banging in goals for fun, having excellent performances. He had his injury. Like, it's not been the easiest pathway for Delap to develop just yet, but the more minutes he gets under his belt, hopefully confidence and goals come with that.
Needs goals.
Yeah.
Assists are great, but you need goals. That's as simple as that. And even if it comes off like a blocking from a goalkeeper, you need those.
I remember Torres, you'd be like willing those ones to go in, where you just think, we need that boost.
What a throwback.
Yeah.
No, for sure. But Rosenior was full of praise for him as well. And his movement, we've got to talk about his movement too.
Yeah, I'd still like to see more of what I saw second half, because, as I said, he's capable of doing it. Liam Rosenior is going to back him. Of course he is. But the goals count. And I think what we got to try and do is get him in more of those goal scoring opportunities. It's not like he's missing hatfuls either, you know?
No, you're right. I think there's been a few times where we seem to find João Pedro more. And so the part of that will be his movement. Obviously, it's just stuff he has to improve on, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about the striker situation a little later on as well. Let's talk about Mamadou Sarr then. He's back. And what do you make of his performance?
I thought it was comfortable. Again, I think we have to take into consideration the opposition, but a lovely game for him to come into. He put a wonderful ball in over the top for Esteval.
Yeah, you said it.
Esteval's, he does the hard bits. Now he's got his around the goalkeeper, just finish it off. Comfortable. Look. It's difficult to gauge, but from what I saw on Friday night, there's something to look forward to.
Yeah, perfect game for him to start then, yeah?
Yeah, it was, and a David Luiz-esque pass. It felt like a real throwback there to when pick out Pedro. But I really enjoyed his performance just because it looked comfortable. You weren't thinking about him loads, and that's probably the biggest compliment you can kind of pay him in that regard. But there wasn't really much, like I said, there wasn't too much to go off or too much to analyse, partly because of the opposition. But he looks tall. So I was like, okay,
tick, yeah.
You know, that's going to suit you in the Premier League. Like, see how he feels out. Obviously, incredibly young, but there was no notes in terms of anything he did badly.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very impressed, very comfortable. He would have looked back on that first performance and enjoyed it. You know, what's not to love? A clean sheet and 4 goals.
For sure. And do you think he will be the understudy then to a Trevor Chalobah?
Maybe, possibly. We just don't know. We've still got Josh. We've got to talk about Josh as well. You know, we've got a lot of options at the back, huge amount of options actually. With Badia Shield still very much part of it. Levo Cole's got to come back from injury. Yeah. You know, we've got a lot of young centre backs.
Yeah. Do you think then? Let's talk about centre backs. Do you think Fofana is a good pairing for him, for Mamadou Sarr?
Yeah, I think they looked comfortable against Hull, but realistically, it's one of those ones with Fofana. We're sort of managing his minutes, trying to get him back to playing consistent football because it's been a number of years since he's had that. So there's always that sort of question mark, and we've got a few question marks in our squad with those kind of things where they have their injury issues. But I do like Wesley Fofana. I think he's a really good player. And at the moment, it does feel sort of like Chalobah and Fofana are the starting.
It does feel that
doesn't
way,
it?
Yeah. They're our main 2 centre halves.